I was sitting at the dining room table when my daughter looked at my son and said something that wasn't directed at me. It was about me, but it wasn't meant for me. And you know what was even stranger? Nobody thought it was strange. It was as if I wasn't there, or worse, as if I were but didn't need to be. It took me 3 seconds to understand. They had already decided. They weren't going to ask. They weren't expecting me to speak. And I realized that it hadn't started that day. I had just taken a while to see it. My name is Robert. I am 71 years old. I worked 43 years as a civil engineer. I retired 6 years ago. My wife died 4 years ago. Since then, I have lived alone in a house we bought in 1982. 3 bedrooms, big backyard close to my 2 children. Or it used to be close. Now it seems far away, even though I live 10 minutes away by car. I always felt I had built something solid, a life with structure, thoughtful decisions, clear. Relationships. My children grew up well. My daughter Amanda is a lawyer. My son David works in technology. Both are married. 3 grandchildren in total. I used to have dinner with them every Friday, sometimes on Saturdays too. It was good. It was simple. We talked, we laughed, I helped with small things, fixing a faucet, giving my opinion on the car, dad stuff. But something changed. Not overnight. It was gradual, like water that cools down without you noticing. First, the dinners became less frequent. Then the phone calls became shorter, and then at a Sunday meeting something happened that made me stop and look closely. We were all gathered at Amanda's house. I arrived on time. I sat in the living room. I waited. David arrived later with his family. We greeted each other, we went to the table, and that's when Amanda started talking about the house, my house. She said she had talked to David, that they had seen some options, that they thought it would be better if I considered it. I was still processing it when David finished. He said it was safer, more practical, fewer stairs, less maintenance. I looked at the 2 of them. I waited for someone to ask me what I thought, but nobody asked. They kept talking, between themselves, as if the conversation were theirs. And you know what struck me? Nobody thought it was strange. Not their wives, not their grandchildren. It was as if it were normal for me not to participate in a decision about my own life. I didn't say anything that day. I just listened, and when I got home I sat on the porch and thought, had I missed something? Was I slowing down and hadn't noticed? Or were they seeing something I wasn't seeing? Have you ever felt that way? That moment when you realize people are talking about you but not with you? If you're listening to this story now, leave a comment telling me where you are. I want to know. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, subscribe. Because this story is just beginning, and you'll want to know how it ends. In the following days, I paid closer attention. I started noticing things that had previously gone unnoticed. Small things. When I spoke, sometimes someone would interrupt me mid-sentence. When I asked something, the answer was overly simplified, as if I wouldn't understand the complete version. And worse, sometimes I saw Amanda and David exchanging glances. That kind of look that means something, but that isn't said aloud. I realized it early on. I realized something had changed in the way they saw me. It wasn't disrespect, it wasn't anger. It was something more subtle. It was condescension. That kind of patience you have with someone who's no longer on the same level. And that hurts in a way I didn't expect. A week after dinner, Amanda called. She said she wanted to come over to my house to see how I was doing. I said I was fine. She insisted, said it would be quick. I let her. She arrived with a folder, documents. She sat at the kitchen table and started talking about power of attorney, about a will, about organizing things. She said it was important, that at her age everything was already settled, that I needed to think about it too. I heard everything. I looked at the papers, and then I asked why now, why this was suddenly urgent. She hesitated, said it wasn't urgent, but that it was prudent. I asked if David knew about that conversation. She said yes, that they had talked, that they thought it best she come talk to me because she understood these things. And there again I felt it. They had decided amongst themselves. Before talking to me, I didn't sign anything that day. I said I'd think about it. She was bothered. She didn't say anything. But I saw it. She expected me to simply agree, to trust her. And I do trust her. But trusting doesn't mean giving up on thinking. Amanda left my house earlier than planned, and I sat there, looking at those papers on the table. A lasting power of attorney. That means someone can make decisions for me if I can't. And I understood. They were preparing, but for what? I was fine, lucid, healthy. What were they seeing that I wasn't? In the following months, things intensified. Subtly, but constantly. David started calling me every week, always asking the same things: if I was taking my medication, if I had gone to the doctor, if I was eating right. At first I thought it was affection, but then I noticed the pattern. He wasn't asking, he was checking, as if I would forget, as if I didn't know how to take care of myself. I stopped explaining myself, because I realized it was pointless. When I said everything was fine, he kept insisting. When I showed him I was doing everything right, he suggested something else. And you know what happens when you over-explain? People think you're being defensive, they think you're hiding something. So I stopped. I gave short answers. I said everything was fine, and I left it at that. One day, I was at the supermarket, shopping as usual, and I ran into David's wife. She seemed surprised to see me there. She asked if I was alone. I said yes. She said David had mentioned that I could order delivery, that it was easier, safer. I thanked her for the suggestion and continued shopping. But it stuck in my head. David was talking about me with his wife. He was worried about me going to the supermarket, a place I'd been going for 40 years. The following month, Amanda came up with another idea. She said she had a friend who knew a company that provided caregivers, people who help around the house, with cleaning, cooking, companionship. I said I didn't need it. She said it wasn't about needing it. It was about making things easier. I said the house was clean, that I cooked well, that I didn't feel lonely. She insisted, said I could just try it, that the first week was free. They thought I didn't understand. They thought I was resisting out of stubbornness. But I understood perfectly. They were setting the stage, slowly, carefully. First the power of attorney, then the constant checks. Now someone inside my house. It wasn't about helping me, it was about taking control. And the worst part? They thought they were doing it for me. I started paying attention to conversations, not just to what was said, but to what wasn't. At a family dinner, Amanda mentioned that a cousin had gone to a retirement community. She said he was loving it, that there were activities, that there were people his age, that it was safe. And then she looked at me, just looked, didn't say anything, but I understood. David agreed. He said he knew a good place, near his house, that I could visit, just to see it. No commitment. And again, nobody asked if I wanted to. They were planting the idea, hoping I would accept it as if it were my own. I realized early on that this wasn't a conversation about options. It was a conversation about transition. They had already decided that I couldn't live alone anymore. Not because I had done anything wrong, not because I had forgotten something important, but because in their minds, 71 years old meant incapacity. It meant risk. It meant I needed to be managed. There was one day that stood out. It was my grandson's birthday. A party at David's house. I arrived, I greeted everyone, I sat down, and then I realized there were other people there, people I didn't know. David introduced me. He said they were neighbors, that they had parents, my age, that they liked to chat. And he made a point of saying that, my age, as if age were a category, as if I needed pre-selected friends because the ones I had were no longer good enough. I spoke with these people. They were polite, kind, but the conversation was empty. They talked about medication, about doctors, about limitations, and I realized David had orchestrated this. He had invited these people to show me something, to make me feel that I needed a group, a structure, supervision. On the way home I drove in silence. and I thought about everything I had built. I thought about how many decisions I had made in life. Difficult decisions, decisions that affected my family, my work, my future. And now those same people who had benefited from my decisions were telling me that I could no longer make my own. It was around that time that I started to see the whole pattern. These weren't isolated actions, it was a strategy. Amanda with the legal documents, David with the health checks, the two of them with housing suggestions. Everything coordinated, everything thought out. And I was sure they were talking to each other, planning, deciding on the next step. Without me. One afternoon, Amanda came to visit me. She brought prepared food. She said she had made too much and thought of me. She put it in the refrigerator, organized it, and then, while she was there, she started looking around. She opened a cupboard. She commented that she had a lot of things, that I could donate them, that it would make things easier. I let her. I didn't say anything, I just observed. She was mapping things out, seeing what I had, calculating the work it would take to move everything. David called that same week. He said he wanted to talk, in person. I told him to come. He arrived looking serious. He sat down, and he was direct. He said he was worried, that I was very lonely, that the house was too big, that he and Amanda thought I should consider options. I asked, what? Options, he said, that living with one of them, or somewhere more suitable, with proper facilities. I looked at my son and asked if he thought I wasn't doing well. He hesitated. He said that wasn't it, that I was fine, but that I could be better, safer, less isolated. I asked if he thought I was sick. He said no. I asked if I had forgotten something important. He said no. Then I asked why he thought I needed to change my life. He didn't know how to answer. He just said it was for the best. I stopped explaining myself that day, because I realized that explanation wasn't what they wanted. They wanted agreement. They wanted me to accept the role they had defined for me, the role of someone who needs to be taken care of, someone who no longer decides, someone who just follows. And that's when I understood they weren't doing it out of malice. They were doing it because they thought it was right, because society says people my age need help, because they were afraid I would fall, afraid I would forget, afraid I would get sick and they wouldn't be around. But their fear was turning into control, and I couldn't accept that. In the following months, I made a decision. I was going to observe. I was going to wait. I was going to let them move forward, because I realized something. When you resist, people persist. But when you remain silent, they reveal themselves, and I wanted to see how far they would go. I wanted to understand the complete plan before acting. Amanda brought up the power of attorney again, this time with more pressure. She said it was simple, that all she had to do was sign it, that she wouldn't use it, that it was only for emergencies. I said I would think about it. She got frustrated. She said I was making things difficult, that she only wanted to help. I thanked her, and I didn't sign. David intensified his visits. He started showing up unannounced. He'd say he was passing by, that he decided to drop by, but I could see it. He was checking things out, looking around, checking if there was food in the fridge, if the house was clean, if I looked okay. And he always ended the visit with some suggestion about doctors, about exercise, about activities. One day he brought me some flyers from a senior living community. He said it was near his house, that it had a swimming pool, a games room, a nurse available. I took the flyers. I thanked him. I put them on the table, and after he left, I threw them in the trash. Not because the place was bad, but because it wasn't my choice, it was theirs. I realized they were getting impatient. They expected me to give in, to accept, and since that wasn't happening, they started changing tactics. Amanda started talking to other people, to uncles, to cousins, creating a narrative, saying she was worried about me, that I was stubborn, that I wouldn't accept help, and these people would call me, with opinions, with suggestions, all thinking they knew what was best for me. It was during this time that I realized something crucial. They weren't just concerned about my well-being. They were concerned about responsibility, about what others would think if something happened to me, about the guilt they would feel if I fell, if I got sick, if I needed help and they hadn't done anything. It was about them, not about me. And that changed everything. Because I understood that it didn't matter what I said. It didn't matter how many times I proved I was okay. They had decided I was a problem to be solved, and they were going to solve it, with or without my participation. David started talking openly about selling the house. He said the market was good, that I could make a lot of money, that this money would guarantee my comfort. I asked where I would live. He said we'd figure that out later, that the important thing was to secure the money. And there again, I saw it. He was thinking in steps, selling the house, putting the money somewhere safe, and then moving. Controlling everything. Amanda brought up the power of attorney again, this time more directly. She said that if I didn't sign, they would have to consider other legal options. She didn't explain what those options were, but the tone was clear. It was a veiled threat. She wasn't going to force me, but she was going to pressure me until I gave in. And if I didn't give in, they would find another way. I remained silent. I continued observing, and I began to document. Not in an obvious way, but I began to take notes, dates, conversations, suggestions, because I knew that at some point this was going to be important. I didn't know how, but I knew it would be. One night I was lying there, staring at the ceiling, and I thought about how life changes, how relationships become inverted. I raised these two. I taught them to walk, to talk, to decide, and now they thought it was time to do the same to me, to guide me, to decide for me. And the irony was painful. Months passed and the pressure increased. David suggested I get tested, cognitive tests. He said it was routine, that everyone gets them at my age. I asked who everyone was. He didn't answer. He just insisted it was important, that it would bring peace of mind. For him, for Amanda, for me. I went, not because I thought it was necessary, but because I wanted to see how far they would go. I took the exams, memory tests, reasoning tests, attention tests. And do you know what the result was? Normal. Everything within the expected range for someone my age. No signs of decline, no red flags. I was fine. I showed the results to David. He read them. And you know what he said? He said it was good, but that the tests didn't show everything, that I might be fine now, but things could change quickly, that it was better to be safe than sorry, and then I saw it. It didn't matter what I did. It didn't matter how much evidence I provided. They had decided I was vulnerable, and they were going to act on that. Amanda started bringing David's wife into the conversations. 2 against 1. They talked about practicality, about safety, about how it would be easier if I were nearby, if there were people around, and I listened, in silence, because I knew that the more they talked, the more they committed to the narrative. And when you're committed to a narrative, you stop seeing reality. One day Amanda said something that caught my attention. She said that if I didn't make a decision, they would have to make it for me. And I asked how. She hesitated. She said there were legal ways, that if someone wasn't in a position to decide, the family could intervene. I asked if she thought I wasn't in a position to do so. She said that wasn't it, but that it was a possibility. In the future, if things changed, they thought I didn't understand. They thought I didn't realize what was being built. But I understood. Perfectly. They were creating a history, documenting concerns, showing attempts to help, building a case so that, if necessary, they could prove that I wasn't capable of taking care of myself. And all this while smiling, while saying they loved me, while saying they only wanted the best for me. I decided to do something they didn't expect. I sought out a lawyer, not the family lawyer, not someone they knew, an independent lawyer. I explained the situation. I showed him the notes. He listened to everything. And then he told me something that confirmed my suspicions. He said that What was happening was common, that families with good intentions often overstep boundaries, and that I needed to protect my rights, legally. We made some documents, a clear will, a health directive, and a declaration of capacity, all signed, all registered, all proving that I was lucid, conscious, and in control of my decisions, and I kept it. I haven't shown it to anyone. Not yet. Meanwhile, David went ahead with the house idea. He brought in a real estate agent, without consulting me first. He said it was just for an appraisal. To get an idea of the value, I let the agent in, look at everything, do the calculations, and when he left, David gave me the number. It was high, very high, and he smiled. He said I was sitting on a fortune, that I could live very well with that money somewhere else. I thanked them for the appraisal and said nothing more. David expected enthusiasm. He expected me to be excited about the value, but I just thanked him, and he was confused. He didn't understand why I wasn't reacting, and the truth is simple. That house wasn't money to me, it was memory, it was history, it was the place where my wife lived, where my children grew up, where I built a life, and they wanted me to trade that for convenience. Amanda called that night. She said David had told her about the appraisal. She said it was great news, that now we could plan. I asked, plan what? She said the move. That with that amount I had options. I could choose where I wanted to go. And I realized they had already decided the house would be sold. The only question was where I would go afterwards. In the following months, they began to act as if the decision had already been made. David started talking about retirement, about what needed to be done to the house before selling. Amanda started talking about organizing belongings, about what I was going to take, what I was going to donate, and I remained silent. I continued observing. One Saturday they showed up. Together. David, Amanda, and their respective families. They said they wanted to help, that they were going to start organizing things. They brought boxes, labels, and they started going from room to room, deciding what stayed, what went, what was important. And they did it without asking me, just informing me. I sat in the room, I watched. And you know what I felt? Sadness. Not anger. Sadness. Because I saw my children, people I love, acting as if I wasn't there, as if my opinion didn't matter. As if I were just an object to be managed, and they did it with smiles, with kind words, thinking they were saving me a lot of hard work. I realized early on that if I confronted them at that moment, they would justify it. They would say they were helping, that I was being sensitive, that they just wanted to make things easier, so I let them organize, I let them put things in boxes, I let them feel in control, because I knew that control is an illusion, and very soon, they would discover that. When they left, I looked at those boxes. I looked at the labels, and then calmly I unpacked everything. I took the things out of the boxes. I put them back in their place, and I left the empty boxes in the garage. They would notice, and they would be confused. But I wasn't going to explain, because an explanation at that point wasn't going to change anything. It was a few weeks after the mistake happened. David called saying he had news. He said he'd found the perfect place. An amazing community, with everything I needed, and that there was a vacancy, but that the vacancy wouldn't last, that it was now or never. He wanted me to come see it, immediately. I said I couldn't that day. He insisted, said it was important, that if I didn't go we might lose the opportunity. I said I'd think about it. He got angry. For the first time, really angry. He said I was being impossible, that they were trying to help, and I was just making it difficult. I hung up. 20 minutes. Later, Amanda called. Same subject, same urgent tone. And then I understood. They had planned this together. The job opening, the urgency, all to pressure me, to make me decide without thinking. And there, they made the mistake. Because urgency is the tool of those who want you not to think. And I always think. I told Amanda I was going to consult my lawyer. She was silent. She asked which lawyer. I said I had sought legal advice, about my rights, about my property, about health decisions. She was shocked. She asked why I would do that. I said I thought it prudent. She said I didn't need a lawyer, that I had her. I said she was my daughter, not my legal representative. The silence was long. And then she said something that revealed everything. She said that if I continued to make things difficult, they would have to consider other measures, legal measures, for my own protection. And I asked what measures. She didn't answer. She just said she hoped it wouldn't be necessary. And she hung up. They didn't know. But that conversation had been recorded, not by me, but by the system my lawyer helped me install, legally, with my consent, recording my own conversations. And that conversation, that threat, was now documented. In the following weeks, the situation worsened. David came to my house unannounced with papers from that community. He said he had made a deposit to secure the spot, that I only needed to sign, that we would sort out the details later. I looked at the papers. I looked at my son, and I said no. He turned red. He said he'd used his own money, that he'd lose out if I didn't sign. I told him I didn't ask him to do it, that I didn't authorize it, that the decision was his. He said he did it because I wasn't making the decisions, that someone had to take the lead. I said nobody had to take the lead in my life, only me. He stormed out. He slammed the door, and I knew we'd reached a point of no return. They weren't going to back down. They were going to advance with or without me. And I needed to be ready. I contacted my lawyer. I told him everything. I showed him the recordings. I showed him the notes. He told me I had a case, a solid case. If they tried anything legal against me, I had proof of capacity, proof of pressure, proof of attempted control, and that would change everything in court. But I didn't want a court. I didn't want war. I just wanted them to stop, to see me, to respect me. And my lawyer said that sometimes the only way to be respected is to show that you can't be controlled. And he gave me an idea. We wrote a letter, a formal letter, from my lawyer to my children, declaring that I was in full possession of my faculties, that any attempt to take control of my decisions, property, or health without my authorization would be legally challenged, that I was entitled to my autonomy, and that I expected that to be respected. The letter was sent, certified, to David and Amanda, separately. I didn't warn them, I just sent it, and waited. David called first. He was confused. He said he didn't understand, that they were just trying to help. I said that unsolicited help is an invasion of privacy, that I wasn't incapable, that I didn't need to be managed. He said he never said I was incapable. I then asked why they were making decisions for me. He didn't know how to answer. Amanda called later. She was hurt. She said she couldn't believe I'd involved a lawyer. That it was extreme, that it was unnecessary. I said that if it were unnecessary, they wouldn't have threatened legal action. She was silent, and then she said she never threatened. I said I had a recording. She hung up. In the following days, nothing. Total silence, no calls, no visits. And you know what I felt? Relief. Because for the first time in months I was at peace. No one suggesting anything, no one pressuring me, no one deciding for me. But I knew it wasn't over. They were going to sue. They were going to think about it, and they were going to come back, with a new strategy or with acceptance, and I was prepared for both. 2 weeks later, I received an email from Amanda asking to talk in person. I accepted. We arranged to meet at a cafe, neutral, public. She arrived. She sat down, and for the first time he truly looked at me, not with pity, not with concern, but with recognition, and he said he had thought a lot about it, that he had talked to David, that they had realized. They had overreacted, that they only wanted to protect me, but that they understood, that I had the right to live as I wanted, for as long as I could. I thanked them, and I said I understood where it came from, that I knew it was concern, but that concern doesn't justify control, that love doesn't justify disrespect, and that if they really cared, they needed to trust me. Trust that I knew what I was doing, that if one day I needed help, I would ask for it. But until then, my life was my own. Amanda agreed. Her eyes welled up with tears. She said she was afraid of losing, afraid of not being there if something happened. And I understood, because I was afraid too. Afraid of growing old, afraid of dependence, afraid of losing autonomy. But fear cannot be the basis of decisions. Fear paralyzes, fear controls. And I wasn't going to live controlled by their fear or my own. She asked if we could start over. I said yes, but with clear boundaries, with mutual respect, with real communication, not veiled suggestions, not pre-decided decisions, but honest conversations, where my voice mattered as much as theirs. David took longer. He called weeks later. He apologized. He said he'd lost the deposit money, that the job went to someone else, and that in the end he realized it was for the best, that he'd acted impulsively, out of fear, because of pressure from his wife, who was also worried. I said I understood, but that he needed to understand too, that I was the father. But that didn't mean he could decide for me. He agreed, and for the first time in a long time we had a real conversation, on equal terms, no condescension, no veiled suggestions, just two adults talking. And it was good. Things returned to normal, slowly, cautiously, but they did. Dinners resumed. Phone calls became lighter, and I realized they had learned. Not because I yelled, not because I argued, but because I maintained my position, calmly, with dignity, and with clear consequences. Today I look back and see everything clearly. My children weren't villains, they were scared people, scared of time, of loss, of responsibility, and in trying to avoid future pain, they were causing present pain. But they learned, and so did I. I learned that silence is not weakness, that observing is not omitting, that waiting is not giving up. I learned that sometimes the best answer is no answer, until the right moment. I learned that dignity is maintained with actions, not words, and that respect is earned with limits, not concessions. I still live in my house, I still drive, I still take care of myself, and when I need help, I'll ask for it. But it will be in my time, in my condition, with my voice. Because I realized it early on. I realized that when you give up your voice, you give up yourself. And I wasn't willing to do that. If you're listening to this story and you identify with it, know one thing. You don't need to shout to be heard. You don't need to fight to be respected. You just need to stand firm, calmly, clearly, and with the certainty that your life is yours, no matter your age, no matter the pressures, your life, your decisions, your time. Not every warning is a favor, and those who realize it early don't need to rush. They just need to wait, because the truth always comes out, and when it does, it speaks for you. If this story touched you in any way, please like the video. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, subscribe now, because there are many more stories like this, stories of people who lived, who understood, who waited, and who in the end maintained their dignity. You are part of this now, and I want you here with me in this conversation. Until next time.